Welcome, dear listeners, to the English Globe. I'm Adam. Thank you for joining us today. Whether you're listening from home, school, your office, or even while walking outside, we're happy you're here. This podcast is all about learning English by exploring important topics that shape our world. We use real global issues to help you grow your language skills and your knowledge together.
And I'm Julia. Today's topic is one of the most talked about issues in international news today. It's called China versus the West. Who will win the new Cold War? This may sound like a scary or confusing title, but don't worry. We'll break it down slowly, clearly, and simply. By the end of this episode, you will understand what this new Cold War really means.
Why is this topic important for you as an English learner? Because it's more than just a news headline. It's a global situation that affects technology, the economy, education, jobs, and even the apps we use every day. Learning about this topic helps you improve your English and also understand world events that shape the future.
Before we dive in, dear listeners, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The English Globe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. Your support means a lot and helps us bring you more interesting and useful content every week.
And we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? What do you think about today's topic? Is this a real Cold War or just a tough competition? We read every comment and love to hear your thoughts. Your opinion helps us shape future episodes, so please don't be shy.
Let's begin by asking a simple question. What is a Cold War? A Cold War is a time when two powerful countries or groups compete strongly, but do not fight each other directly with weapons. Instead, they fight with ideas, trade, technology, and influence. They want to be the leader in the world without starting a real war.
The first Cold War happened after World War II, between the United States and the Soviet Union. It lasted from around 1947 to 1991. These two superpowers did not attack each other directly, but they competed in many ways: space, military strength, spreading their political systems, and building alliances with other countries.
Now, people believe we may be entering a new Cold War, but this time it's between China and the West. When we say the West, we usually mean the United States, the European Union, Canada, Australia, Japan, and some other allies. These countries often work together based on shared values like democracy and free markets.
China, on the other hand, has grown very fast in the last few decades. It is now the second largest economy in the world. It has also become very powerful in technology, manufacturing, and international business. Some experts say China wants to create its own path and challenge Western influence around the world.
But remember, this is not a war with guns or tanks. It's a competition about power. Who will lead the world in the future? It's about who builds the best technology, who controls the most trade, who has more political influence, and who can create strong international partnerships.
Why is this situation called cold? Because there is no actual fighting between soldiers, at least not yet. It is a silent battle that happens through laws, companies, trade deals, education systems, social media, and even cultural influence like movies, music, and news. Each side wants the world to follow its way.
For example, China has its own companies like Huawei, TikTok, and Alibaba. The West has Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. They compete in the same markets, but they work under different rules. China also uses its Belt and Road Initiative to build roads, railways, and ports in other countries to grow its influence.
Western countries are also trying to protect their interests. Some are placing limits on Chinese technology, controlling investments, or forming military partnerships in Asia. They worry about data privacy, political control, and the future of freedom in digital spaces. That's why many people call this a Cold War.
But this situation is not exactly the same as the old Cold War. The world is very different now. Back then, The Soviet Union and the US were mostly separate. Today, China and the West are connected. They trade every day. Many Western companies rely on Chinese factories, and Chinese students study in Western universities.
That makes this Cold War much more complicated. You cannot simply choose one side without facing economic costs. Each side needs the other in some way. This makes the rivalry both more peaceful and more dangerous. Peaceful because there is no fighting. Dangerous because one small mistake could lead to serious problems.
So, is there really a new Cold War happening today? Some experts say yes. Others say it's just a natural power shift in the world. What is clear is that we are watching a growing strategic rivalry. Understanding this helps us all prepare for the future and stay informed as global citizens.
That brings us to the end of our first section. In the next part, we'll go back in time and explore the original Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union, so we can better compare it to what is happening today. This will help us understand how history shapes the present.
And one last reminder before we go. Tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? What's your opinion about today's topic? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others who want to improve their English and understand the world.
Thank you, dear listeners. We're excited to continue this journey with you in the next episode of The English Globe. See you in Section 2. In the first section of this podcast, we introduced the idea of the new Cold War between China and the West. We explained why it matters and how this modern conflict is more about ideas, trade, and influence than war. Now, in this section, we'll go back in time and look at the first Cold War, so we can understand how today's situation is similar and how it's different.
The original Cold War started right after World War II. The world had just seen a massive and deadly war, and two great powers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. These two countries had very different ideas about how the world should work. The US believed in democracy and capitalism. The Soviet Union believed in communism and state control of the economy.
The Cold War between them lasted for more than 40 years, from around 1947 to 1991. But it was never a full military war. Instead, it was a long period of political tension, military buildup, economic competition, and global influence battles. Each side tried to gain power by forming alliances and influencing countries around the world.
The US led a group of democratic countries through organizations like NATO. The Soviet Union led communist countries through the Warsaw Pact. They competed in many areas: space technology, military weapons, sports, and global media. The Cold War even reached space, with the famous space race of the 1960s.
One major fear during the Cold War was the threat of nuclear war. Both the US and the Soviet Union had powerful nuclear weapons, and the world worried that a mistake or small conflict could lead to global destruction. This fear led to long periods of diplomatic tension and careful planning on both sides.
In the 1980s, things began to change. The Soviet economy was weak, people wanted more freedom, and reforms were introduced. In 1991, the Soviet Union officially collapsed. The Cold War ended without a shot being fired between the two main powers. The United States remained the world's strongest superpower.
For about 20 years, many people believed the world was moving toward peace and unity. Globalization increased, trade grew, technology connected people in new ways. But now, many experts say we are entering a new era of competition, this time between the United States and China.
So, how is this new rivalry similar to the old Cold War? First, there is again a division in political and economic systems. China has a one-party government with strong state control over the economy. The West supports multi-party democracy, free elections, and open markets. These different systems create natural tension.
Second, there is a fight for influence around the world. The US has many allies, but China is building its own influence. especially through projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, where it builds roads, ports, and railways in Asia, Africa, and beyond. This reminds some people of the way the US and Soviet Union competed during the Cold War.
Third, both sides are now competing in technology and military power. The US and China are racing to lead in areas like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, semiconductors, and space technology. Both are increasing military spending and modernizing their armies. These actions remind many of the arms race during the old Cold War.
But there are also important differences. The biggest one is economic connection. During the old Cold War, the US and Soviet Union barely traded. Today, China and the West are deeply linked. The US buys many goods from China. Chinese companies depend on Western software and markets. The two sides need each other in many ways.
Also, today's world is more globalized. Information spreads quickly online. People travel, study, and work across borders more than ever before. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was mostly closed off. But today, China is much more open in trade, travel, and education, even while it controls its own internet and media.
Another key difference is that the old Cold War had clear sides. You were either with the US or with the Soviet Union. Today, many countries prefer to stay neutral. Nations like India, Brazil, Indonesia, and many in Africa want good relations with both China and the West. They don't want to choose one side.
In this way, the new rivalry is more complex and multi-layered. It's not just about two systems or two ideologies. It's about technology, data, economics, values, and global leadership. This makes it harder to manage, and also harder to predict what will happen next. That's why understanding history is so important.
So, can we call this situation a new Cold War? Some experts say yes. They see the signs: rising tension, economic battles, and political division. Others say no. They believe the world is too connected today for a Cold War to happen again. They think this is just a power shift, not a cold conflict.
Whether we call it a Cold War or not, one thing is clear. We are entering a time of global competition. China and the West are moving in different directions, and their relationship is becoming more difficult. This affects us all, no matter where we live or what language we speak.
And that's why we're having this conversation on the English Globe. We believe it's important to learn about the past so we can understand the present. When we know where things come from, we can ask better questions and think more clearly about where the world is going.
In the next section, we'll look more closely at how China rose to global power. We'll explore its economic success, international influence, and what makes it so strong today. This will help us understand why the West sees China as a real challenge, and why this rivalry continues to grow.
When we talk about the new Cold War, we have to look at economics. Today, China is the second largest economy in the world, right after the United States. In the past few decades, China has lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, built cities, highways, and high-speed trains, and become the manufacturing center of the world. This economic rise is one of the main reasons why China is now seen as a challenger to Western dominance.
That's right, Adam. If we look at trade numbers, China is the biggest trading partner for many countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. While the West, especially the US, has strong trade networks too, China is using its Belt and Road Initiative to build deeper connections. This strategy includes building ports, roads, and railways in dozens of countries, giving China more global influence.
Yes, and the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, is not just about economics. It's also about soft power. China is creating partnerships and making friends in regions that were once under strong Western influence. For example, many African countries now rely on China for infrastructure, loans, and investment. This can shift global power over time in a quiet but steady way.
Meanwhile, the US and its allies continue to focus on innovation and high technology. Western companies still lead in areas like artificial intelligence, pharmaceuticals, and financial services. But China is catching up fast. Companies like Huawei, BYD, and Tencent are becoming global players. China is also investing heavily in semiconductors and green energy to reduce reliance on Western tech.
Another important factor is control over supply chains. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries realized they were too dependent on Chinese factories. This caused some to shift their supply chains or move production back home. Western governments are now talking more about economic security and trying to reduce their reliance on China, especially in key areas like medical supplies and microchips.
That's a major shift. At the same time, China is trying to become more self-reliant. This is part of its dual circulation strategy, focusing more on its internal economy while still engaging with the world. China wants to make its own chips, develop its own technologies, and depend less on imports. This is a direct response to Western efforts to limit Chinese access to advanced tech.
We can also talk about currency. The US dollar is still the world's main currency, used in most global trade, but China is promoting the use of its currency, the yuan, especially in trade with Russia, the Middle East, and Africa. Some people believe China wants to challenge the dollar's power. However, the yuan still has a long way to go before it can become a true global currency.
It's also interesting to see how global institutions are reacting. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and others are still mainly influenced by Western countries. But China is building its own institutions too, like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. These steps show that China wants more say in how the global system works, not just to follow Western rules.
In many ways, this economic competition is like a chess game. Both sides are trying to gain position, build alliances, and prepare for long-term influence. The West wants to protect its position, while China wants more space to grow. But it's not a zero-sum game. Both sides still need each other. The US and China are deeply connected through trade and finance, even if there's rivalry.
You're right. Even during tensions, American and Chinese businesses continue to work together. Apple, Tesla, and many other big companies rely on Chinese workers and factories. At the same time, Chinese students study in Western universities, and many Chinese consumers love Western brands. So the world is still very connected, even if the politics feel divided.
That's the complex part of this so-called New Cold War. It's not just about power and control, it's also about cooperation, business, and people-to-people ties. The global economy is deeply linked, and both sides benefit from peace and stability. That's why many experts say that a full Cold War might not happen the same way it did between the US and Soviet Union.
But the economic rivalry is real. Governments are setting new rules. Some countries are choosing sides. Technology is being controlled. Sanctions are being used. These are clear signs of competition. And in this global economy, small decisions can have big effects. A single trade ban or tech restriction can change the entire world market.
So in the end, it's not just about who's stronger today. It's about who can adapt, innovate, and build stronger partnerships around the world. China is using investment and trade to win friends. The West is focusing on values, freedom, and innovation. Both sides are playing different games, and we don't know yet who will win, or if anyone will.
Exactly. And maybe winning isn't the right word. Maybe the goal is balance, a world where both sides can grow without fighting. Let's hope leaders think more about people than power. In the next part of the podcast, we'll explore the military side of this global rivalry and what it means for peace and security.
Julia, when we look at China's economic strategy, it's clear that the Belt and Road Initiative is a major tool for expanding influence. By building infrastructure in many countries, China creates new trade routes and partnerships. This helps these countries develop, but also connects them closely to China's economy. What do you think about the impact of BRI on global economics?
That's a great point, Adam. BRI shows how China is not just focusing on its own economy, but reaching beyond its borders. This initiative is about more than money. It's about relationships and long-term influence. Some countries welcome the investment because it helps build roads and ports quickly. Others worry about growing debt and loss of independence.
The West uses different tools. For example, institutions like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank provide loans and financial advice, but often with strict conditions about how money should be used. This sometimes makes countries hesitant, especially when Chinese loans come with fewer political demands. How does this affect the global balance of power?
It definitely creates competition. Some developing countries might prefer China's softer approach, while others value the stability and transparency that Western aid promises. This economic rivalry shapes political alliances. Countries have to decide who to trust and work with more closely, which changes the international landscape.
Let's talk about technology. China has become a leader in key industries like 5G, artificial intelligence, and electric cars. Companies like Huawei and BYD are global names now. But many Western countries are cautious about using Chinese technology, fearing security risks and control over data. How does this tech rivalry influence global politics?
It's huge, Adam. Technology is no longer just business. It's about national security and influence. Western governments have restricted Chinese companies from working on critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, China is pushing to develop its own advanced technology to reduce dependence. This competition may decide which country leads in innovation for decades.
Another big issue is trade. The US and China have had several trade disputes recently, with tariffs rising on many products. These trade wars can hurt companies and consumers everywhere. Do you think these trade conflicts could escalate further?
It's possible, but both sides also understand the risks. Global supply chains are deeply connected, and neither side wants to damage its economy too much. So, while trade tensions remain, there are also negotiations and agreements aimed at reducing conflict. Still, the uncertainty makes businesses nervous.
Europe has a unique position in all this. It often shares values with the US, but also has its own interests. European countries trade a lot with China and want to keep good relations. How do you see Europe's role in this economic rivalry?
Europe tries to balance both sides. It supports democratic values, but also knows that China is an important trade partner. Europe has proposed new policies to protect its industries while staying open to business with China. This balancing act is challenging and shows how complex the global situation really is.
Currency is another area of competition. The US dollar has been the world's main currency for decades, but China is promoting its own currency, the yuan, especially in trade with some countries. How important is this shift?
It's significant, but the yuan still has a long way to go before it challenges the dollar's dominance. Many countries trust the dollar for stability. China wants to increase the yuan's use to gain more economic power, but this depends on financial reforms and global confidence.
What about global financial institutions? The West has historically controlled groups like the IMF and World Bank. China has created new ones like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. What does this mean for global influence?
It means the global system is becoming more multipolar. China wants a bigger voice in how international finance works. New institutions give developing countries alternatives to Western-led organizations, changing the balance of power in global governance.
Despite the rivalry, China and the West are economically connected. Many Western companies rely on Chinese factories and workers. Chinese consumers buy Western products. How does this connection affect the rivalry?
It creates both cooperation and tension. Economic ties mean that conflict can be costly. Both sides benefit from trade and investment. This connection can reduce the risk of open conflict, but also creates vulnerabilities if tensions rise.
Some experts say this economic competition is a long game, a slow chess match. Both sides are building alliances and positioning themselves for the future. Do you think this competition could become cooperation?
It's possible. There are areas where cooperation benefits everyone, like climate change and public health. But competition will remain strong. The future may be a mix of rivalry and collaboration, depending on interests and leadership.
What about smaller countries caught in the middle? Many developing nations don't want to choose sides, but must manage relations with both China and the West. How do you see their role?
They have growing influence. These countries can leverage their position by working with both sides. But they also face pressure to pick a side. Their choices will shape regional and global dynamics in important ways.
Let's discuss soft power, the ability to influence through culture, education, and values. China invests in Confucius institutes and cultural exchanges. The West promotes democracy and human rights. How does soft power play into this rivalry?
Soft power is crucial. It shapes public opinion and builds long-term relationships. China's cultural diplomacy tries to present a positive image abroad. The West uses media and NGOs to promote democratic ideals. Both sides want hearts and minds, not just markets.
Cybersecurity is also part of the economic and political competition. Both sides accuse each other of hacking and espionage. How does cyber activity affect trust and cooperation?
It damages trust deeply. Cyber attacks create fear and suspicion. They make governments more defensive and less willing to share information. This harms cooperation on global challenges and increases tension.
How do economic sanctions fit in this picture? The West has placed sanctions on Chinese companies and officials, and China has responded with its own measures. What impact do sanctions have?
Sanctions are a powerful tool to pressure governments and companies. They can slow down economic progress, but may also hurt ordinary people. Sanctions increase tension and can escalate conflicts if not managed carefully.
So, Julia, in summary, the economic competition between China and the West is wide-ranging and complex. It involves trade, technology, currency, finance, and influence. How do you think this will shape the world in the next decade?
It will likely define global politics and economics for years to come. The balance of power may shift, new alliances will form, and countries will have to navigate a changing world carefully. For all of us, staying informed and open-minded is key to understanding these changes.
Julia, after discussing economic influence, it's important to look at military strategies. The old Cold War was marked by an intense arms race and military alliances. Today, while China and the West avoid direct conflict, they are both increasing their military spending and modernizing their forces. How do you see this shaping the global security environment?
That's a key question, Adam. Both sides want to protect their interests and show strength. The United States remains the world's top military power with bases all over the globe. China is rapidly expanding its navy and missile capabilities, especially in the South China Sea. This builds tension in regions critical for trade and security.
The South China Sea is a hotspot. China claims much of this area, which is rich in resources and a major shipping route. The U.S. and its allies conduct freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's claims. This back and forth increases the risk of accidents or misunderstandings that could escalate.
Exactly. Both sides are trying to balance between showing resolve and avoiding conflict. They often use military exercises, patrols and partnerships with regional countries to strengthen their positions. These moves signal power, but also raise concerns about stability in Asia-Pacific.
Another area of concern is Taiwan. China considers Taiwan part of its territory, but Taiwan operates as a self-governed democracy. The U.S. supports Taiwan's defense without official diplomatic ties. This delicate situation is watched closely by many, because any conflict there could trigger a larger war.
Taiwan is a symbol of the broader rivalry. For China, reunification is a goal of national importance. For the West, Taiwan represents democracy and freedom. Both sides want to avoid war but prepare for the possibility. This makes Taiwan a flashpoint in the new Cold War.
Cybersecurity and space are new frontiers in military competition. Both China and the West invest in cyber defense and offense capabilities. Cyber attacks can target infrastructure, steal information, or disrupt economies without traditional warfare. How serious is this threat?
It's very serious. Cyber warfare is difficult to detect and respond to, increasing fear and mistrust. Many governments have experienced cyber attacks that damaged critical systems. Space is also becoming militarized, with satellites used for communication, navigation, and surveillance. Controlling space assets is vital for national security.
Both sides also maintain nuclear arsenals. The old Cold War was defined by nuclear deterrence. Mutual fear prevented direct war. Today, while arms control agreements exist, there are worries about new weapons development and reduced communication. How does nuclear strategy impact global peace?
Nuclear weapons remain the ultimate deterrent, but their presence creates constant risk. Modernization of arsenals and lack of new treaties increase uncertainty. The danger is that miscalculations or accidents could lead to catastrophe. Maintaining dialogue and agreements is essential to avoid escalation.
Alliances remain important. The U.S. leads NATO, a strong military alliance in Europe and North America. China has fewer formal alliances, but builds strategic partnerships through economic ties and joint military exercises. How do these alliances shape the global balance?
Alliances provide security guarantees and collective defense, deterring aggression. NATO's presence reassures many countries, but also worries China and Russia. China's partnerships offer influence without formal commitments, allowing flexibility. These different approaches reflect contrasting military strategies.
Military technology is evolving quickly. Both sides develop advanced weapons such as hypersonic missiles, drones, and autonomous systems. These innovations can change the nature of warfare, making it faster and more complex. What challenges does this create for global stability?
Rapid technological change makes it harder to predict or control conflicts. New weapons may lower the threshold for military action or create arms races. Without clear international rules, these developments increase risks. Cooperation on arms control and transparency is needed, but difficult to achieve.
Regional conflicts also play a role. China supports some countries diplomatically and economically, and the West backs others. These local disputes can become arenas for larger rivalry. How do such proxy conflicts affect the new Cold War?
Proxy conflicts allow competition without direct confrontation. They can destabilize regions, prolong wars, and increase suffering. While they offer strategic advantages, they also complicate peace efforts. The international community must work to prevent escalation and promote dialogue.
Military budgets have grown significantly. The U.S. spends more than any other country, but China's military budget is the second largest and increasing steadily. How sustainable is this military spending for both countries?
High military spending strains national budgets, especially if economies slow down. China balances military growth with economic development, while the US faces political debates about defense priorities. Long-term sustainability depends on political will and economic health.
Public opinion and political leadership also influence military strategies. In some countries, people want peaceful relations and cooperation, while others support stronger military stances. How do governments balance these pressures?
Governments must consider public opinion, economic costs, and international obligations. Leaders use diplomacy, alliances, and military preparedness to manage risks. Finding the right balance is challenging, especially when domestic politics are divided.
The rise of new military domains like artificial intelligence and cyber warfare creates ethical questions. How should countries regulate weapons that may act autonomously or interfere with civilian infrastructure?
These are difficult issues. International law struggles to keep up with technology. Ethical debates focus on accountability, civilian protection, and transparency. International cooperation is essential, but currently limited by mistrust and competition.
Despite the rivalry, some military-to-military communication exists to avoid misunderstandings. Hotlines and confidence-building measures were effective during the old Cold War. Are such mechanisms working today?
Some communication channels remain, but they are less developed and sometimes disrupted by political tensions. Improving military dialogue is vital to prevent accidental conflict, but trust is low. Rebuilding these channels is a priority for stability.
The military competition is part of a broader strategic rivalry, including economics, technology, and ideology. How do these different aspects interact to shape global security?
They are deeply interconnected. Military strength supports economic interests, and technology drives both. Ideological differences add complexity. Understanding this web helps explain why tensions exist and why solutions are difficult.
Julia, to finish this section, what message should our listeners take about military competition in the new Cold War?
The message is that while military competition is serious, it is not inevitable that it leads to war. Awareness, dialogue, and diplomacy are key to managing risks. We must hope that leaders on all sides choose peace over conflict.
Julia, technology is at the heart of today's global rivalry. The race to lead in fields like artificial intelligence, 5G networks, quantum computing, and biotechnology is fierce. Both China and the West are investing huge amounts in research and development. But why is technology so important in this new Cold War?
Technology drives economic growth, military power, and social influence. Whoever leads in tech shapes the future economy and the rules of the digital world. It affects everyday life, from how we communicate to how countries protect themselves. So, controlling advanced technology means having a strategic advantage.
Let's take 5G as an example. China's Huawei is a global leader in 5G technology, which allows faster internet and connects many devices. Western countries worry about security risks if they rely on Huawei's equipment. This has led to bans and restrictions. How do you see this affecting global tech development?
It's a big challenge. On one hand, 5G is vital for economic progress and innovation. On the other, security concerns make countries cautious. Some fear that using Chinese tech could allow spying or sabotage. This has created a divide where countries have to decide between security and technological benefits.
Beyond 5G, artificial intelligence is changing how countries operate. AI can be used for medical diagnosis, self-driving cars, military surveillance, and more. China and the US both want to be the world leader in AI. What does this competition mean for innovation and ethics?
AI raises many ethical questions, such as privacy, bias, and the future of work. The race to lead AI can speed up innovation, but also increase risks if regulations are weak. Both China and the West must balance rapid development with responsible use to avoid negative impacts on society.
Quantum computing is another area with huge potential. It promises to solve complex problems much faster than current computers. This could break current encryption, affecting security worldwide. How are China and the West approaching this technology?
Both are investing heavily. China claims breakthroughs in quantum communication, and Western countries are funding research to catch up. Whoever leads quantum technology could control future communication security, making it a critical part of national defense strategies.
Biotechnology, including genetic research and medical innovation, is also part of the tech race. China has made great advances in gene editing and vaccines. The West has strong pharmaceutical industries and research institutions. How does this competition affect global health?
It can speed up medical progress, benefiting people everywhere. But it can also lead to competition over patents, access to medicines, and ethical standards. Collaboration is needed to fight global health threats, but rivalry may slow down cooperation.
Technology also impacts information and media. Social media platforms influence public opinion and political views worldwide. China controls its internet tightly, while Western countries promote free speech online. How does this difference affect the global digital space?
It creates competing models for the internet. China's Great Firewall restricts access to information, while the West values openness but faces challenges like misinformation. Countries around the world watch these models and sometimes adopt one or a mix, shaping the future of digital freedom.
Cybersecurity is a major concern. Both sides accuse each other of hacking government agencies, stealing trade secrets, and interfering in elections. How does cyber conflict fit into the technological rivalry?
Cyber attacks are a low-cost way to challenge rivals and gain advantage. They increase mistrust and make cooperation difficult. Cybersecurity is now a core part of national defense, and protecting data and infrastructure is a priority for all countries.
The tech competition is also about controlling supply chains for critical components like semiconductors. China imports many chips but wants to produce more domestically. The West is investing in chip manufacturing to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. How important is this for national security?
Very important. Semiconductors power everything from phones to weapons. Dependence on others can be risky during conflicts or crises. Both China and Western countries want secure, reliable supply chains to protect their economies and security.
Education and talent development play a key role in technological leadership. China sends many students abroad and builds its own universities. Western countries attract international students and invest in research. How does this shape the future tech workforce?
Talent is a critical resource. Countries compete to educate and retain skilled scientists, engineers, and innovators. Restrictions on visas or research collaborations can limit this exchange, but open education systems can also foster breakthroughs and partnerships.
Intellectual property rights, like patents and copyrights, are another area of tension. China has been accused of copying Western technology, while China argues for fairer treatment. How do these issues affect global innovation?
Protecting intellectual property encourages innovation by rewarding creators, but too strict rules can slow sharing of ideas. Finding a balance is hard, especially in a competitive environment where technology is linked to national security.
Government investment plays a big role. Both China and the West use public funds to support tech startups, research labs, and innovation hubs. How do state policies influence the tech race?
Strong government support can speed progress. China's Made in China 2025 plan aims to become a global tech leader. Western countries use grants and incentives. However, too much government control can limit creativity, while too little can slow development.
Global tech standards and regulations are also contested. Different countries propose rules for data privacy, AI ethics, and internet governance. How does this affect international cooperation?
Conflicting standards can fragment global markets and slow technology adoption. Agreeing on common rules is difficult but necessary for interoperability and trust. Tech diplomacy is becoming an important part of foreign policy.
Private companies lead many innovations, but also face pressure from governments. Companies like Huawei, Google, and Alibaba operate globally but navigate political tensions. How does this relationship impact the tech rivalry?
Companies want profits and market access, but must comply with national laws and policies. They sometimes face bans or sanctions. Their success depends on balancing business goals with political realities, which is increasingly complicated.
In conclusion, the technological competition between China and the West shapes economic power, security, and daily life. It offers opportunities for innovation, but also risks conflict. What advice do you have for listeners interested in this topic?
Stay informed, think critically, and remember that technology affects everyone. Encouraging cooperation while managing competition is the challenge of our time. Understanding these issues helps us all navigate the complex future ahead.
Julia, beyond economics and technology, the political and ideological differences between China and the West play a big role in this rivalry. The West emphasizes democracy, individual rights, and freedom of speech. China, on the other hand, has a one-party system focused on stability, economic growth, and social control. How do these differing values affect their relationship?
That's a central question, Adam. These opposing ideas shape how each side views the other. The West often criticizes China for human rights issues and lack of political freedoms. China, meanwhile, argues that its system works better for its people and culture. This clash of values makes dialogue difficult and feeds mistrust.
Many Western countries see democracy as a universal goal and encourage it globally. This sometimes leads to pressure on China regarding issues like freedom of the press, religious rights, and political dissent. China sees this as interference in its internal affairs. How does this disagreement influence global diplomacy?
It creates tension and limits cooperation. China insists on respecting sovereignty and non-interference, while the West promotes human rights as a global standard. These conflicting approaches often result in disagreements at the United Nations and other international forums, making consensus harder to reach.
The issue of Hong Kong is a clear example. The West supported protests for democracy and criticized China's actions to increase control. China views these protests as threats to national unity and security. How does the Hong Kong situation reflect broader ideological conflicts?
Hong Kong represents a test case of China's one country, two systems policy. The West sees the crackdown as a violation of freedoms promised to Hong Kong citizens. China argues that maintaining order is essential. This difference highlights how political values lead to clashes in international opinion and policy.
Another flashpoint is Taiwan. China views Taiwan as a part of its territory and opposes any moves toward formal independence. Western countries, especially the U.S., support Taiwan's democratic government and provide military assistance. How does ideology influence these actions?
Taiwan's democracy is seen by the West as a model of freedom in the region. China sees it as a challenge to its authority and sovereignty. This ideological divide increases tensions and complicates efforts to find peaceful solutions. Taiwan remains a symbol of the larger struggle between competing political systems.
Media freedom and information control differ greatly between China and the West. Western media often criticize China's censorship and propaganda. China promotes its own narratives and restricts foreign media. How does this affect global perceptions?
Media shapes how people understand each other. Western coverage tends to highlight human rights abuses and authoritarianism, while Chinese media emphasizes national achievements and criticizes Western hypocrisy. This media divide deepens misunderstandings and fuels negative stereotypes.
Social media plays a role too. The West supports platforms that promote free expression, though they also struggle with misinformation. China controls its internet tightly to maintain social stability and limit dissent. What impact does this difference have globally?
Countries around the world observe these models and choose what fits best. Some adopt strict internet controls, others promote open access. This creates competing visions of the internet's future, with implications for freedom, privacy, and government power worldwide.
Human rights are a major point of disagreement. The West emphasizes individual rights and freedoms, while China focuses on collective rights like economic development and social order. How do these different priorities influence international relations?
These differences shape policy debates and alliances. The West often calls for sanctions or actions in response to human rights concerns. China argues that economic progress improves people's lives and that stability is key. This creates ongoing disputes in global institutions.
China's concept of socialism with Chinese characteristics blends state control with market economy. The West favors liberal capitalism. How does this economic and political model challenge Western ideas?
China's model shows an alternative path to development, one that many developing countries find attractive. It challenges the idea that liberal democracy and free markets are the only way forward. This diversity complicates Western efforts to promote its values globally.
International organizations also reflect these ideological struggles. Western countries often lead in global institutions, but China is increasing its influence. How does ideology play a role in this competition?
China wants to reform international rules to better represent its interests and values. This includes economic governance, security, and cultural norms. The West tends to defend existing institutions and promote liberal principles, leading to clashes in global governance.
Both sides use soft power, culture, education, and diplomacy to promote their values. China invests in Confucius institutes and media abroad, while the West funds NGOs and international broadcasting. How effective is this soft power competition?
Soft power shapes opinions and builds long-term influence. China's efforts help improve its image, especially in developing countries. Western soft power remains strong in promoting democratic ideals, but both face challenges from growing nationalism and skepticism.
Ideological differences also influence military alliances and partnerships. Western countries often require shared values for cooperation, while China's partnerships may focus more on economic or strategic interests. What are the implications?
This means the West tends to build coalitions around democracy and human rights, while China forms flexible partnerships. This difference affects global alignments and the kind of cooperation possible in security and development.
How do these ideological conflicts affect the average person around the world?
People may feel caught between competing narratives. Political values affect trade, travel, education, and media. Understanding different viewpoints can help reduce fear and promote peaceful coexistence. But polarization makes this harder.
Is there room for ideological dialogue or compromise between China and the West?
Dialogue is difficult but necessary. Finding common ground on issues like climate change, health, and economic stability could build trust. Respecting differences while cooperating is a challenge, but the only way forward.
To close this section, Julia, what should listeners keep in mind about the political and ideological dimensions of this rivalry?
Remember that values matter deeply, but don't have to divide us. Recognizing complexity and avoiding stereotypes can help us understand this rivalry better. It's about ideas, yes, but also about finding ways to live and work together in a shared world.
Julia, after talking about politics and ideology, it's important to consider the human side of this rivalry. Cultural exchange and people-to-people connections often help build understanding, even when governments disagree. How do these exchanges influence relations between China and the West?
That's a great point, Adam. Cultural exchanges, through education, tourism, art, and sports, create personal connections and break down stereotypes. Many people in China and Western countries learn about each other's history, traditions, and daily life. These experiences promote empathy and often soften political tensions.
Education is a major area of cultural exchange. Every year, many Chinese students study abroad in Western universities, and Western students visit China for language and cultural programs. How do these educational ties affect long-term relations?
Education builds bridges that last a lifetime. Students who experience different cultures often become informal ambassadors. They bring back knowledge, language skills, and new perspectives. This exchange also supports global cooperation in science, technology, and business.
Tourism is another way people connect. Millions travel between China and Western countries each year, experiencing local cultures firsthand. What role does tourism play in shaping perceptions?
Tourism offers a direct, personal experience that can challenge stereotypes. Visitors see the diversity, hospitality, and challenges of other societies. These encounters can build respect and reduce fear, which is vital in times of political tension.
Cultural events like art exhibitions, music festivals, and film exchanges also contribute. For example, Chinese cinema has grown popular in the West, and Western music and fashion influence Chinese youth. How do these cultural flows impact global relations?
Culture is a powerful way to share ideas and values without words. It opens doors to dialogue and mutual appreciation. These exchanges help create a more connected world, where people can find common ground despite political differences.
Sports have long been a bridge between nations. Events like the Olympics or international tournaments bring people together and create shared moments. How do sports impact China-West relations?
Sports promote friendly competition and teamwork. They allow people to celebrate excellence and overcome cultural barriers. Sporting events also provide opportunities for dialogue and cooperation, helping to ease tensions.
Language learning is another key connection. Many people in China learn English, and many Westerners study Chinese. How does language influence cultural understanding?
Language is the key to communication and connection. Learning each other's language opens up access to literature, media, and everyday conversation. It also signals respect and interest in another culture, which builds trust.
Despite these positive exchanges, political tensions sometimes disrupt cultural programs and student visas. How do such disruptions affect people-to-people ties?
They can create setbacks and mistrust. When governments restrict visas or cancel programs, it limits opportunities for understanding. This hurts long-term relations because cultural ties often outlast political conflicts.
Social media has also changed how people connect. People from different countries can share their lives, opinions, and cultures online. What opportunities and challenges does this present?
Social media expands cultural exchange, but also spreads misinformation and stereotypes. It allows direct communication, but can deepen divisions if used irresponsibly. Managing social media's impact is a new challenge for global relations.
Diaspora communities, people living abroad, also serve as bridges between cultures. Chinese communities in the West and Western expatriates in China often maintain cultural traditions and share them locally. How important are these communities?
Diaspora communities build grassroots connections. They foster multicultural understanding and business links. They can advocate for peaceful relations and help their countries understand each other better.
Artistic collaborations, like joint film productions or music projects, bring creative talents together. How do such collaborations influence broader diplomatic relations?
They showcase shared human experiences and creativity. Art can transcend politics and promote dialogue. Successful collaborations highlight common values and inspire cooperation beyond government policies.
Cultural misunderstandings can still happen, leading to conflict or stereotypes. How can people and governments reduce these misunderstandings?
Education and open dialogue are key. Promoting accurate information, respecting differences, and encouraging curiosity help break down barriers. Governments and civil society should support cultural programs and exchanges to build trust.
How can the younger generations contribute to better China-West relations through culture?
Young people are often more open-minded and tech-savvy. They can use digital platforms for cultural exchange, organize student groups, and participate in international projects. Empowering youth to lead these efforts is crucial for future peace.
Do you see any examples of successful cultural diplomacy between China and the West?
Yes, programs like university partnerships, Confucius Institutes, and international arts festivals have fostered positive exchanges. These initiatives demonstrate that despite political differences, cultural cooperation remains strong.
To wrap up this section, Julia, what message would you give our listeners about cultural exchange's role in this rivalry?
People-to-people connections build the foundation for understanding and peace. Culture helps us see beyond politics and recognize our shared humanity. Supporting and participating in cultural exchange is one of the best ways to create a more peaceful future.
Julia, one area where China and the West both face common challenges is the environment. Climate change, pollution, and resource management affect every country on the planet. Despite their rivalry, do you think China and Western countries can find ways to cooperate on these global issues?
Absolutely, Adam. Environmental problems don't respect borders, and their impacts are shared worldwide. Climate change in particular threatens economic stability, health, and security. While China and the West have competing interests, cooperation on environmental protection is essential for everyone's future.
China is the world's largest emitter of carbon dioxide due to its heavy industrialization and large population. The West, especially the US and Europe, have historically emitted the most greenhouse gases. How do these facts influence their responsibilities and roles in global climate efforts?
These differences shape international negotiations. The West argues that as historical polluters, they should lead on emission reductions and support developing countries. China stresses its right to develop and reduce poverty while committing to green policies. Balancing fairness and effectiveness remains a challenge.
Both sides have made important climate commitments. China aims for carbon neutrality by 2060, and many Western countries have set ambitious goals too. How realistic are these targets?
The goals are a step forward, but implementation is difficult. China's energy demand grows rapidly, and its economy still relies heavily on coal. Western countries face political and economic challenges in transitioning to renewable energy. Achieving these targets requires strong policies and international cooperation.
Renewable energy development is a key area of competition and cooperation. China leads in manufacturing solar panels and wind turbines, while the West innovates in technology and finance. How do these dynamics play out?
China's large-scale production lowers global costs and drives adoption. Western countries focus on research and sustainable financing. This creates both competition in markets and opportunities for collaboration in technology sharing and joint projects.
Environmental issues are linked to economic policies. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative includes green projects, but also funds coal plants. The West criticizes this, but also finances fossil fuels in some places. How does this affect global environmental progress?
It shows the complexity of balancing development and environment. Developing countries often need reliable energy for growth, making coal attractive. Both China and the West face criticism for inconsistent policies. Transparency and stronger green financing can improve outcomes.
Pollution is a serious problem in many Chinese cities, as well as industrial areas in Western countries. How do China and the West address air and water pollution, and what lessons can they share?
Both sides have made progress through regulations, technology, and public awareness. China has invested heavily in pollution control, and the West has decades of experience with environmental laws. Sharing best practices and technologies can benefit everyone.
Biodiversity loss is another urgent concern. Habitat destruction, illegal wildlife trade, and climate change threaten many species. How are China and the West involved in protecting biodiversity?
Both participate in international agreements and conservation efforts. China has established nature reserves and promotes wildlife protection. Western countries support global treaties and fund conservation projects. Collaboration can strengthen these efforts.
Water scarcity affects parts of both China and Western countries. Efficient water management is crucial for agriculture, industry, and human health. How are these regions tackling water issues?
Innovative technologies like water recycling and smart irrigation help manage scarce resources. Policies to reduce waste and pollution are important too. Learning from each other's successes and failures can improve water security worldwide.
Environmental activism has grown globally, with young people leading the way. How do environmental movements in China and Western countries differ or align?
Activism in the West often focuses on government accountability and lifestyle changes. In China, environmental activism is more cautious due to political restrictions, but growing awareness is visible. Both movements push for urgent action and influence policies.
International climate talks, like the UN's COP conferences, bring countries together to negotiate. How effective are these talks in bridging differences between China and the West?
They provide important forums for dialogue and agreement. While progress can be slow and disagreements common, these talks build trust and set global standards. Success depends on political will and implementation back home.
Technology again plays a role in environmental solutions. Innovations in clean energy, carbon capture, and electric vehicles are essential. How do China and the West compete and cooperate in green technology?
Both invest heavily in green innovation. China's manufacturing scale and the West's research strengths complement each other. Joint ventures and technology sharing could accelerate the transition to a low-carbon future.
Financing the green transition is a major challenge. Developing countries need support to adopt sustainable practices. How are China and Western countries helping with green finance?
Both provide loans, grants, and investments, but sometimes with different conditions. Aligning green finance with development goals and environmental standards is critical. Cooperation can increase funding and ensure responsible use.
Environmental security, including climate-related migration and disasters, affects global stability. How does cooperation between China and the West help address these risks?
Collaborative disaster response, information sharing, and humanitarian aid are essential. Joint efforts in climate adaptation and resilience build stability and trust. Ignoring these issues could worsen conflicts and global challenges.
Julia, to conclude this section, what hope do you see for environmental cooperation amid rivalry?
Despite political tensions, shared survival depends on cooperation. Environmental challenges are a powerful motivator to work together. With commitment and mutual respect, China and the West can lead global efforts to protect our planet.
Julia, after exploring many aspects of the rivalry between China and the West, it's natural to wonder, what does the future hold? Will this new Cold War continue indefinitely, or is there hope for cooperation and peace?
That's a crucial question, Adam. The future is uncertain and depends on choices made by leaders, businesses, and citizens. The rivalry involves deep economic, political, and cultural differences, but it also includes shared challenges like climate change, health, and global security that require cooperation.
Some experts suggest the rivalry could become more intense, with increased competition in technology, military, and influence. Others hope for a stable coexistence, where both sides respect boundaries and focus on dialogue. What factors will influence which path is taken?
Several factors matter, including leadership decisions, domestic politics, economic conditions, and global events. Confidence-building measures, arms control agreements, and open communication can reduce risks. Conversely, nationalism, misinformation, and crises may escalate tensions.
The role of international institutions is important. Will organizations like the United Nations, World Trade Organization, or climate summits help manage competition and foster cooperation?
International institutions provide forums for dialogue and rules to govern relations. Strengthening these bodies and making them more inclusive can support peaceful solutions. However, their effectiveness depends on member states' willingness to cooperate and respect agreements.
Public opinion and civil society also influence the future. How can people worldwide contribute to easing tensions and promoting understanding between China and the West?
Education, cultural exchange, and responsible media play key roles. Individuals can challenge stereotypes, engage in dialogue, and support policies that promote peace. Civil society organizations can build bridges and advocate for cooperation.
Technology will continue to advance rapidly. How might developments in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, or space exploration affect the future rivalry?
Technology could either deepen competition or become a tool for collaboration. Joint research projects, shared standards, and transparency can reduce mistrust. But unchecked tech races risk creating new conflicts and ethical dilemmas.
Economic interdependence remains strong despite tensions. Will this connection encourage cooperation, or will attempts to decouple economies create more division?
Economic ties create incentives to avoid conflict and work together. However, geopolitical concerns and national security interests may lead to partial decoupling in sensitive sectors. Balancing openness with protection is a key challenge.
Climate change and environmental challenges require global action. Can these shared threats become a foundation for cooperation between China and the West?
Environmental issues affect everyone and offer a unique opportunity for collaboration. Joint efforts in clean energy, disaster response, and conservation can build trust and demonstrate the benefits of working together.
Military tensions remain a concern. What steps can be taken to prevent conflict and promote stability?
Confidence-building measures, arms control treaties, and open military communication channels are essential. Transparency and crisis management mechanisms help reduce misunderstandings. Diplomatic engagement remains critical.
Cultural understanding has improved through people-to-people exchanges. How might this continue to influence future relations?
Expanding cultural and educational exchanges fosters empathy and reduces fear. Encouraging dialogue among young people and civil society strengthens social ties that transcend politics.
Looking ahead, what role do you think emerging global powers beyond China and the West will play in shaping the future international order?
Countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are gaining influence and seeking their own paths. Their participation in global governance and economic systems adds complexity but also opportunities for multilateral cooperation.
Is there a possibility that the new Cold War could transform into a new type of global partnership?
It's possible if both sides prioritize shared interests and respect differences. The world has changed since the old Cold War, with more interconnected economies and societies. This creates a foundation for a different kind of relationship based on competition and cooperation.
What message would you give to our listeners who want to understand and engage with these complex global issues?
Stay informed and open-minded. Seek diverse perspectives and avoid simplistic narratives. Recognize that international relations are complex but not fixed. Every individual can contribute to building a more peaceful and cooperative world.
Julia, thank you for this deep and thoughtful discussion. Before we end, do you want to share any final thoughts?
Thank you, Adam. I hope listeners remember that despite challenges, dialogue and understanding are our best tools. The future depends on choices we make today. Let's choose cooperation, respect, and hope.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you all for listening to this special series on China versus the West, who will win the new Cold War. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the English Globe, and share your thoughts in the comments about what you think the future holds. Where are you listening from? We love hearing from you.